The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the forest clearing. Amidst the verdant foliage and the occasional birdsong, Jebediah, with his bushy white beard and a face etched by time, stood before his cabin, eyeing the unfinished section of the wall with determination. A gust of wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a distant rumble of thunder. Sweat beaded on his furrowed brow as he hoisted a hefty log from the ground. As he labored, Walter watched from a distance, stretched out on a patch of sun-drenched grass. The dog's ears perked up with each strike of the mallet, his eyes following Jebediah's every move, offering silent support to his human companion. The scent of sawdust and freshly hewn wood filled the air, mingling with the earthy fragrance of the forest. Jebediah paused for a moment, leaning against the newly secured log, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand and glanced around the clearing, taking in the fruits of his labor. The cabin stood as a symbol of his resilience and dedication, a place where he could find solace and simplicity in a world that seemed to grow ever more complicated. The wind roared, buffeting Jebediah and challenging his balance. As a single raindrop splattered against his face, it quickly turned into a deluge, drenching him in icy water. Despite the weather's onslaught, Jebediah allowed himself a small, satisfied smile, admiring the progress he had made. With renewed vigor, Jebediah picked up his hammer and remained steadfast in his work. After a while, the rain stopped. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the twilight cast its soothing hues over the quiet forest. A few hours later, the first light of dawn filtered through the dusty glass of the half-open cabin windows. Jebediah and Walter awoke to greet the new day. The air was crisp and cool, filled with the dewy scent of the early morning. The gentle murmur of the river flowed lazily over the soft rocks, creating a soothing gurgling sound as it made its way downstream. Jebediah took his fishing gear from the worn leather satchel slung across his shoulder. Walter, unable to contain his excitement, suddenly leaped into the river with a splash, sending ripples through the water and scattering the fish. "Now, Walter," he chided, trying to maintain a stern expression, "you know better than to scare away our dinner." The yellow pup emerged from the water, shaking the wetness from his coat and wagging his tail apologetically. With a grin, Jebediah cast his line. In the late afternoon, Jebediah and Walter reclined near a smoldering campfire. The quiet crackling of the firewood harmonized with the gentle rustling of leaves as they savored the serenity of their woodland sanctuary. Jebediah looked down at Walter, who was resting with his head nestled in Jebediah's lap. He smiled as he fed Walter a few pieces of the fish they had caught earlier that day. As Jebediah stared into the fire, lost in thought, Walter suddenly stiffened. His ears perked, and a low growl emanated from deep within his chest. Jebediah glanced at his companion, startled by the sudden change in demeanor. "What is it, boy?" Walter's dominant stare was locked onto the darkness of the tree line beyond the fire's glow. Jebediah's eyes followed suit, the hair on the back of his neck prickling with unease. There, hidden within the blackness of the tree line, a pair of glowing red eyes stared back at them. Walter, his protective instincts ignited, leaped to his feet and charged into the darkness, barking ferociously. Jebediah, alarmed, shouted after him, "Walter, get back here!" But his plea went unheeded, and Walter disappeared into the forest, leaving Jebediah alone by the fire. The old man hesitated, torn between his concern for his loyal friend and his prudence to not foolishly charge into the forest unarmed. With a determined nod, Jebediah's eyes narrowed as he charged back into the cabin to retrieve his shotgun. The inky darkness of the unlit interior swallowed him as he burst through the door, leaving him momentarily disoriented. Unable to see the storage crate lying in his path, his foot snagged on its edge, sending him sprawling to the floor with a violent crash. The impact jarred his head, his vision swimming as consciousness threatened to slip away. Jebediah fumbled through the darkness, his heart thrumming a frantic rhythm in his chest. He moved with urgency as his trembling hands rummaged through the cupboard, searching for the box of shotgun shells. He could feel the remnants of his fall still gnawing at his senses. The air felt heavy, oppressive, as though the shadows themselves were closing in around him. His unsteady fingers landed on the box, accidentally knocking it over, the shells scattered like spilled marbles, skittering across the floor, mocking his buffoonery. Shit! Desperation clawed at him, an insistent specter at his back. Gritting his teeth, he dropped to his hands and knees. He hunted in the darkness, his fingers probing the splintered floor for the shells. Time seemed to twist and contort around him, each moment an agonizing eternity. Finally, his fingers brushed against the cold metal of a single shell, and he hastily loaded it into the shotgun, the weight of his responsibility bearing down on him. With a deep, unsteady breath, he pushed himself to his feet and staggered out of the cabin, the chilling night air nipping at his skin. The forest loomed before him, a menacing mass of shadows, each twisted branch a gnarled finger beckoning him forward. Walter's distant barks punctured the silence, a haunting plea drawing Jebediah into the foreboding unknown.